Good evening, everyone. Salem City Council Committee of the Whole is meeting tonight with Prime Group and their representatives and consultants to present the most current plans for the Shetland Park property. This meeting is being held here in Council Chambers on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters that we just discussed. Absent from the Council of the Whole are Councilor Harvey, Councilor Varela, and Councilor Watson-Feld. For everyone's information, for everybody listening on Zoom, this is an informational meeting only. It's to update the council on the proposed plans, and we're expecting that these will continue to change as input is being provided to the city by the Prime Group. There will be no votes taken tonight on any issue. The permitting process has not begun. There has not been any yet proposed zoning changes. We will begin this meeting with representation from the Prime Group, followed by a question and answer period to the City Council. If time allows, I will open the meeting for public comment. I hope this meeting will answer many of our questions and concerns. We are welcome for any fresh and constructive dialogue to better understand the feasibility of this project. Also, for people watching in Zoom, I believe that the Prime Group has provided a Spanish interpreter, which can also be provided through Zoom. I will begin turning it over to Patrick for the presentation. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Sorry, I'm nervous tonight. Councilor Cohen and Councilor Giraldo. Thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight. Thank you for making time in a holiday week for us to be heard. Very much appreciate the opportunity. During the last 5 years that I've been spending a lot of time in Salem, I've gotten to know quite a few different things about Salem, and one of them being the importance of Salem to the council. It's been eye-opening for me. It's been a great community to get immersed in, and it's been a great community to get to learn people. So not only appreciative of the project, but appreciative to get to know the people of Salem. The ideals here are really great. So. Tonight, as you hear a few different things, I guess I want to say one more thing, that I just want to thank Councilor Cohen and Councilor Giraldo for continuing to push me and my group for deeper affordability and better job creation on site, and I think you're going to see some of that reflected tonight. You're going to see a lot about the potential of Shetland tonight and what we can achieve and what's possible. A lot of this isn't possible without, change in zoning. And obviously that's what we're here. We're starting the conversation. There's going to be many more meetings after this. This is an informational meeting to bring the council and others up to speed on, where we're at and what our thoughts are and what's possible on the site. So. There's a big team behind me tonight. I'm just the nervous guy up front. They're going to do much better than me. Katie Davis is here. Katie's at Shetland Park every day. She's going to spend a few minutes. Sean Selby will have a few minutes. He's going to talk about the master plan in depth. Robert Moser, CEO and President of Prime Group, will speak quite a bit about the investment in Salem and what else is possible. So, and then we'll leave it open for questions. So, Katie.
Good evening, everyone. Councilors, thank you all for having us here tonight. My name is Katie Davis. I am the Executive Vice President of Prime Group Shetland Park. I am part of the on-site leadership for Shetland. I oversee all commercial leasing and property operations at the park on the day-to-day. I have been with Shetland Park and the property in some capacity over the last 10 years, so I have very intimate knowledge of everything there is at Shetland Park. I'm not going to go into any history here with the property. I believe many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the site. But Shetland has been a landmark on the Salem waterfront for over 100 years as a hub for business and community. Today, Shetland Park is home to 119 different businesses, including educational and healthcare sectors. And that includes 13 nonprofits serving the city of Salem and surrounding communities. Also 5 public serving agencies of the Commonwealth and 1 federal agency. Shetland Park is a resource for the community. Its programming supports various activities and initiatives, including but not limited to the Haunted Happenings Parade, and most recently the North Shore Pride Parade. Today it also supports various training initiatives for the city itself. We work with Salem Fire Department, Salem PD, as well as ATF and the K-9 training groups throughout the Commonwealth as well. We also offer a lot of free space for the various nonprofits within the park to provide their programming to the communities, as well as miscellaneous use of the facilities and the grounds for different programming. While the site as it exists today has many positive attributes, it also has a lot of challenges, and those are things that I deal with every day. Without any rezoning or repositioning and significant investment, both publicly and privately, the site's going to eventually become obsolete in use, infrastructure, and sustainability, making it more of a liability than an economic resource that it deserves to be. Some of the challenges that we face at the site today, physical and structural challenges. The site is approximately 29 acres, predominantly of paved, impervious landscape. Deteriorating underground utilities are something that we face all the time. This picture here, it's not a pretty one, but this is not unusual for me to wake up to a 5 a.m. or a 6 a.m. call of underground pipes bursting and challenges like that. And it's tough to deal with on site, but it's also a challenge for our tenant base. There's a few of you in here that I know from Shetland today, so I'm sure you're used to that. It's a 100-year-old property located along the waterfront, so this is a recipe for recurring, unique, and often complex maintenance issues. The buildings and site are generally energy inefficient and environmentally unsustainable. There's also many economic and market challenges. From the commercial leasing side of what I do, there's a limited demand for large-scale space. Many of the buildings are challenging to subdivide, and this is particularly 45 Congress Street. I don't know if many of you are familiar with it, but it's the long building that runs north to south along the waterfront, the sawtooth structure. You can see from the slide on the screen, it is 422 feet long. This creates a significant challenge in terms of subdividing and being able to provide the smaller space that the commercial market demands today. So there's also, in addition to all these challenges that we're facing, there's a lack of modern amenities such as community space, outdoor green space, on-site restaurants, and other services that attract quality tenants and employees to the community and their businesses. There's also some operational limitations. This is a property that has been in operation for many, many years and has adapted over several decades to the current use. So there's limited pedestrian paths, no sidewalks, which creates a safety hazard for the tenants and the visitors alike. There's also poor site circulation. If many of you have been to Shetland Park, it's not unheard of to see a tractor-trailer truck pulling in, the school kids walking by. It's very, very mixed use, as well as limited circulation, so very narrow roadways, challenging roadways, as well as being cut off from the neighborhood. I hate to make this sound as though I'm, talking terrible about Shetland Park, because it does have a lot to offer the community, as I mentioned previously, but the site as it exists today, it's clearly underutilized. Shetland Park is just an asset that's not meeting its potential. These pictures up here show, you can see, and everybody knows this from being in the Point neighborhood, it's just cut off from the neighborhood, and the site could, and frankly should be reactivated to provide access to the waterfront, give the community the green space, as well as provide community programming and art installations. I've always affectionately called Shetland Park my concrete jungle. That's kind of what it is. That's kind of it in a nutshell. it's underutilized. I think there's a lost opportunity for all parties if we do nothing here. But with that said, I will turn it over to Sean, who will more eloquently be able to describe the benefits of the project and provide a more high-level overview of what the site could potentially look like and provide to the community and the neighborhood at large. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. I want to thank the council and the council president for inviting us in tonight. This is a special treat for us who have been working on the project for a while. This is obviously the first time that we've presented in this chamber in a formal setting. So in many ways, it feels like a beginning. It's a beginning of a long process, we understand, between now and whenever shovels might hit the ground. But in some ways, it's also we've been at this for a while. We talked earlier that we started this process over 5 years ago, in early 2020, and I remember it because most of those meetings were on Zoom, just like we are right here, right now. But at that time, we were still trying to figure out how to work the Zoom. And in those early meetings, I recall that some of the first meetings we had was one with the Point Neighborhood Association, where we met Lucy, and we met the folks from the neighborhood, and also the Salem Sustainability, Energy, and Resilience Committee, where we met Councilor Cohen, who was not yet a councilor yet, I don't think. And in those meetings, we learned quite a lot. We learned that the neighborhood has folks who are struggling with affordability issues, whether that's housing or finding groceries, since the nearest grocery store is a couple miles away, and even finding good paying jobs. So we learned quite a lot in those early meetings from the PNA. From CERC, we found out that there were problems with storm surge, water breaching the berm that surrounds Shetland Park, flooding issues in the park, and many of the same things that Katie just went over. So we learned quite a lot in those meetings, and since that time, early 2020, we've had over 250 meetings with lots of groups, not just CERC and the PNA, but with the North Shore CDC, the Salem Partnership, the Salem Chamber of Commerce, and lots of other groups that we've talked with and learned from. And so I want to step back from that just for a second and walk through the neighborhood a little bit. Because in addition to those meetings, we have had the chance to find out what the character of the neighborhood is, the Point neighborhood. And we have found it to be colorful, warm, inviting, the people to be the same. They've invited us into conversation, and this is a neighborhood that is not shy about expressing itself through art, through music, both of which you encounter no matter what day you're there, walking the streets, seeing the murals, seeing and hearing the music coming out of darn near every window. And so we've learned quite a lot about the character. And one thing that's important to us is that we've learned that this is a very inclusive neighborhood. It's not just a slogan. This is lived in the neighborhood. In fact, one conversation that we had with a young man just a little short time ago at the fiesta told us, and he was around 20 or so, he said that he feels that the Point neighborhood is a family. Those are his words. It's a family situation, and people know each other on the streets, and they have conversations, they learn about what's going on and where they're going to school and what they're doing in their jobs, etc. And we find that's great to learn about that. And we have felt it ourselves. We've recently been to the Fiesta. We walked around during Juneteenth celebration in Mary Jane Park, and we met tons of people and had lots of conversations with the folks enjoying those festivities. But it's not just those days. It's any given Tuesday where you can walk the streets and meet people and talk about life's challenges and life's accomplishments. So we want to take that flavor and build it into the proposal for a new master plan. So how do we do that? Early on, in our exploration of the project, we came up with a few objectives, and these are big, broad objectives, hopefully attainable, but we're trying to make them sky high, and we think that we can get there. So the first is reconnecting the neighborhood. As Katie just mentioned, and as you saw in one of the pictures, there's that black iron fence that runs along Pingree. It turns a corner, runs along Lynch Street, and it separates Shetland Park from the neighborhood. That made a lot of sense back in 1914. It was a factory. It was built as a factory, not as a neighborhood dwelling. So we want to reconnect that neighborhood. There's also an incredible asset that Salem has, and that is the Atlantic Ocean, your neighbor. And right now, Shetland Park turns away from the waterfront. The Point neighborhood has essentially no direct access other than Palmer Cove Park, but we feel that Shetland Park is a great place to reconnect with the water. And lastly, we want to build for tomorrow. We don't want to do those first two things and then fail to build it so that it could withstand the elements of rising sea levels and challenging environmental issues. So if we can build it right, then we can make those first two things last for generations. So how do we do that? The first thing is reconnecting the neighborhood. So we would remove that fence that runs along Pingree and Lynch Streets, street the Shetland Park so that Palmer Street, Levitt Street, and Lynch Street go right through the property all the way to the water's edge. And I don't mean that cars will be able to get to the water's edge. I just mean that the walkways and the pathways where people can proceed will be able to extend those streets all the way to the waterfront so that waterfront access is achieved. We're trying to stitch back the Shetland Park into the neighborhood, make it part and parcel and integral with the neighborhood. And the second thing is the waterfront. How can we turn that into an enjoyable asset that everybody can enjoy? And that's by building harbor walks, parks, playgrounds, etc., along the waterfront. And we have a lot of ideas on how to do that and have people enjoy the waterfront as it is. You have this great asset right there. Let's open it up. And third thing is, and sorry for this a little bit technical drawing, but in the bottom right there you see, I'll try to describe this. We're going to rebuild the seawall. This is in order to build resilience in this site and build it for generations to come. So we're going to rebuild that seawall tall enough to withstand any storm surge that happens soon. We're going to build up the ground plane behind it so that it's above 2070 projections for sea level rise. And on that new ground plane, we're going to install sidewalks with benches, with activities all along. And underneath that ground plane, we have a resource we have plenty of space to make room for stormwater storage. So that water that would today come over the berm and flood the parking lot, we have room to store that and empty it back to where it needs to go. So those are the objectives. Those are the strategies. What's the master plan, you're asking? So let me talk about that. So the master plan, we have shown this to quite a number of people over the last several months. People have seen this. We haven't changed it, but I want to go through what it is. So on the left side, or the north end of the site, we're accumulating all of that square footage that is today commercial space on site. Today there's about 1 million square feet of commercial space on site. Not all of that is leased for the reasons that Katie mentioned. We're going to reconfigure that commercial square footage so that it's on the north end of Shetland Park, closest to the Congress Street Bridge, closest to downtown. We're going to build purpose-built commercial space so that we can attract the newer tenants of today. We're not bringing back the textile mills from 100 years ago. We need to build something that today's commercial tenants will enjoy. That's going to, by removing Building 4, that sawtooth roof building, that's going to allow us to build a new school for Salem Academy at the most southern end of the site. That's that building, if you can see S1 at the far right. That building is going to house all of Salem Academy's activities, all under one roof, not the 3 separate locations that they have today, where the 10th and 11th and the 12th graders are trying to dodge traffic to get to the arts complex or the gym. It's all going to be under one roof, next to the Palmer Cove Marina, lots of green space around it, park, playgrounds, etc. And in between those two regions is new residential, and we're proposing 1,200 residential apartments, of which 20% would be affordable. And also, what is hard to see here, but we're planning on adding parking to the site to serve the new uses, but almost all of that parking will be below ground. And when I say below ground, what I mean is today's Building 4 is the basement of Building 4, where prime storage is, would be converted to parking. So it's underneath each of those buildings. So most of that parking will be underground. Some of it will be in the existing parking garage that's there today. That would remain. In addition to that, we're talking about a lot of sustainability and infrastructure improvements. Everything from building all electric buildings, so as much fossil-free uses as possible. All of the residential will be all electric, and as many more as we can. We're going to update, as I mentioned a minute ago, the stormwater system. We're going to add 400 plus trees to the site. There's not a tree on site today. So that would be a great improvement. And finally, we've talked about the building in new bus shuttles to the MBTA train station, as well as the ferry across the water, in addition to bike share programs. And so I might, as an aside, say that we've done quite a lot of study on the infrastructure, whether that's the utilities and underground sewer and stormwater systems. We've done quite a lot of study of the traffic that exists today in the Point neighborhood, and made projections. And we're looking forward to meeting our counterparts at the city to make sure that all of that is designed in the right way and it is accommodating of the future needs. Next is, let's talk a little bit about the commercial space. We have, as I said, we're going to have 1 million square feet of commercial space, which matches what's there today. In a few minutes, Bob is going to talk about some great ideas on how to kickstart the commercial space, including an incubator program and grant programs for local businesses and local entrepreneurs to take advantage of. We've talked about having union training on site to build up the workforce and give them the skills that they need to manage the work environment today. And lastly, but not least, the public space. If you look at this plan, it's a little bit hard to see where the buildings are. And I'm not going to say that that's on purpose, but we have thought of the roofs of these buildings as having a variety of photovoltaics, green vegetated roofs, white roofs for reflectivity, in order to bring the heat island effect that exists today. I mean, as Katie said, this whole site is either asphalt or building, and it's generating plenty of. You can go there today. Today would be a good time to check this out. The heat coming from the asphalt, we want to bring down by adding lots of park and playground space to the site. In addition, coming back to those murals and artwork, I love the Faceless Lady program in the Palmer Cove Park. We'd love to form partnerships with local artists and local art groups to help provide public art throughout the site. So those are the stats, if you will, but what will it feel like? I realize that a lot of folks have trouble reading plans, so why don't we look at some images of what these planned buildings could look like. So we'll start at the very northern end of the site. This is just before the Congress Street Bridge on the Shetland Park side. And if you look carefully in the circle image at the top right, that image is taking exactly where the rendered image below is taken. So it's the same viewpoint, just a different image. So we're imagining that why not have, instead of parking and confusing pedestrian walkways, why not have a park there at the front door to Shetland Park? If we continue down Congress Street, everybody knows the Community Health Building. Behind it, we have a new commercial building that is connected to that, what is currently the Community Health Building, but that possibly could be converted to an incubator space. Again, I sort of mentioned that a little earlier, and Bob's going to talk to that. Between Building 1 and Building 2, and those two buildings are the tall existing buildings that exist today, closest to the South River and next to the Congress Street Bridge. And this is what it could look like. Festive, colorful, art, pop-up shops, coffee, pizza, etc. Not just offices and research, etc., which those things will continue to be there. But could we populate this with a pedestrian-only walkway? We think so. Next is at the waterfront. This image, what you're seeing there is where the RMV is today. And what it could be is a civic space or a food hall, perhaps. We obviously haven't leased anything, but it seems like a good candidate for something festive, something where you can get a slice of pizza and sit down next to the waterfront and enjoy the views. An image between a couple of the new residential buildings, and again in that circle up in the right, that's the view, that same view. What you're seeing is a lot of cars and the sawtooth roof beyond, but it could be, this is Palmer Street. If it extended to the water, we're standing at the water looking back. And I always think of how could we make this successful, and that is is, if we make the sidewalks and the places where people walk and meet their neighbors and talk about their dogs and talk about their kids and talk about the things that come up in our daily lives, this is where the real flavor of the city comes out. And if we can do this right with porches and other places for people to gather and to sit and chat, then we'll have done a good job. Pingree Street, and this one's interesting. If you look carefully at the circle up above, you can see that black, I'll try to point it out. Let's see. Here's that black iron fence right here, if you can follow my mouse here. That fence is roughly where this white line is. So what we're proposing is to widen Pingree on the Shetland Park side. That's essentially giving away land to widen that street, because if you've been down Pingree, you've seen how narrow it is. Difficult to maneuver, difficult to drive down, and we're going to widen that so that there's space for cars, bikes, etc. But then we're also going to pull back or set back the buildings against Pingree so that there's plenty of buffer for trees and for sidewalks and for community interaction. Going a little further along, this is the corner at Palmer Street and Pingree Street. We feel like that could be an important intersection for the neighbors, for the folks who live in the neighborhood to enter the site. Again, welcome everybody. There's no passwords to get onto the site. There's no fee. This is an open site. Folks are allowed and welcome to walk those paths all the way to the water. And we thought, this could be a place for us, perhaps a splash pad, maybe it's some other kind of playground equipment. We don't know yet, but it is a place where things could happen. And in the corner, in the very center of the image, we have space for a community room. And we know that Espacio is always packed, is always booked, and here's another place where community groups could meet, and we have a few good candidates for those kinds of things. Stepping back a little bit further, this is the existing Palmer Street, and you're looking toward that same intersection that we just looked at to get a feel for not only we've been asked how tall are the buildings, how dense is it, but from this viewpoint, we're not this isn't trickery, but this is what the buildings would look like in the distance by looking up Palmer Street and through, and we want that visual corridor to be complete all the way to the water's edge. Last couple slides, we are looking here at the southern end of the site. The Palmer Cove Marina is off to the right. We think that this would be a great place for kayaks, for students or residents alike to grab a kayak, scoot into the water, or just start their stroll around the perimeter of the site, which is, there's 2/3 of a mile of waterfront on this site, and we want to be able to access that both visually but also really with boating activities. And then lastly is the southernmost corner of the site, southeastern corner of the site, where we feel like there's a great opportunity for a 2.5 acre or so open park. Ideas galore on how to fill that with bandstands or activities like maybe it's a inboard beach scene. There's lots of ideas that we would love to engage folks to talk about and reimagine what that is from today. I'd like to introduce Bob Moser to finish us out.
Thank you, everybody. I want to thank the council and the council president and the citizens of Salem for joining us this evening. Am I okay? Thank you. So for over 100 years, Shetland Park and the 30 acres that it encompasses has been closed off from the city and the residents because of this fence that outlines the property. Our goal is not only to integrate Shetland into the neighborhoods, like we've seen in the diagrams this evening, by extending the roads to the waterfront, but integrating Shetland into the lives of the citizens of Salem. And we're going to do that a few different ways. I grew up, my dad is a retired New York City detective, and the best times I had with my father when I was little was fishing on the piers down in Sheepshead Bay and other parts of New York. We did not have the money to go to fancy areas, and here in Salem, you have this beautiful piece of waterfront that has been closed off for, like I said, in nearly 100 years, not only to the children, but all the citizens of Salem. My goal is the opposite of what you see across the country, where everybody's trying to make private developments. I want to open this up to the citizens. This is a very big responsibility, owning this piece of property. I've said it from day one when we visited, before we purchased it, and after we purchased it, I keep on reminding myself. Not only do we have thousands of people being employed there, but we have this piece of waterfront that could mean so much to not only the Point neighborhood, but everybody else that lives within the city. So our goal is not only to bring a place alive for the citizens of Salem to enjoy by allowing them access to the waterfront, by removing that fencing to allow the children to come to the waterfront, to allow the parents to walk with their kids or go for a stroll with themselves to the water, but improving that whole waterfront harbor walk area, which does not exist right now. So basically, it would be a walkway throughout the whole shoreline of Salem, roughly a mile, correct, give or take, throughout Salem. Not only that, but we want to be a good shepherd of the community. So my goal is to set up an incubator program for new startups that are within the city, where they can apply and we would provide them with the office space, the back office needs, and all the support staff needed to grow their businesses. This is something that we're working on in our town of Saratoga Springs in New York. We're planning on doing with our new corporate office, but this would be the program that we would like to start here in Salem. In addition to that, our company would want to start a scholarship program for the children of Salem, that they would get to apply for a scholarship that we would be giving away X amount a year through the property for the kids that grew up in this area, which we are currently doing now in upstate New York for children that graduated from Queensbury High School or Hudson Falls or Glens Falls. When they go to one of the regional colleges, they can apply for a scholarship program that Prime has set up. We would be doing the same here in Salem. We want to be not only part of the community as a developer, but we want to make sure that we improve people's lives along the way. It's a lot of people can say that, but I think it's a really good foot forward that we're actually opening up this 30 acres for the community use. I don't know how many people, if you could raise your hands, actually have spent time inside Shetland Park, but currently it's a parking lot. It really is. There's no permeable subsurface. There's no grass area. There's no fields to play in. We're changing all of that. We want to put in a 9-acre recreation area that's wide open, as you can see on the screen, for all the members of the community to use, to enjoy, to go to the waterfront, to go fishing with their children, to go for a walk, to go for a run, to go for a bike. In addition to that, the new office space that we propose on building, our goal is to support the new wind turbine project to the north. There is really no space in Salem to house the spin-off or the other companies that are going to spin off that project, which is a great project for job creation. But that will only occur if there's actually office space that can handle that type and those needs. We plan on building that at Shetland, so those companies would have a place to flourish, to begin to grow. We saw this in upstate New York, where our office is in Saratoga, in Malta, New York, where they put in a chip plant, which is obviously our version of what's happening here to the north. And the biggest spinoff was not only the jobs that were created at the chip plant, but were all the spinoff jobs that were created by the companies that supported it. And you're going to see that here in Salem, which I think is great. The project at Shetland will employ over 1,000 construction jobs, well over 1,000, and then there would be hundreds of jobs that would continue to operate at Shetland. And our goal would be to offer those jobs to the citizens of Salem before we went outward with them. These jobs would range from managerial jobs to office to white collar to blue collar to technicians, straight up through the whole job chain. They would be high-paying jobs that will be at the people's footsteps, at their doorstep, where they won't have to commute to. It'll be right here in your backyard. So we're going to take this project, this 30 acres, that has never been accessible prior, and we're going to make it accessible, but make it a park-like setting while still employing all the people that currently work there. That is a big point. I want to make sure there's no jobs being eliminated. We're actually going to be creating new modern office space to bring in additional jobs to the city. I appreciate everybody's time this evening. I know there's been a lot of speculation going around about this project, and I hope we were able to clear up a lot of the confusion. It's still in the works. We're going to be reaching out to the community to get their ideas, one of them being what this should be named. You know, there's a lot of things we've kicked around, but that's a big, I'd like to get the community involved in that, what this project should be called, the streets that go through the project, who they should be named after. But I really want to be this integrated into Salem and have the city really embrace this project. And if there's any other ideas, please bring them forward to our team. We're here to listen. You know, this is a very important, my son's baseball game, I thought I was going to be late, but we were at a baseball game this evening. I have a little boy that plays Little League, but I was glad I was able to come this evening and see everybody and speak to everybody, and I'll be around after this if anybody else wants to grab me aside and speak with me. But I want to thank again everybody for their time. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council, for having us this evening, and we look forward to working with you, and hopefully we can do our best for you. Thank you. Patrick.
Thank you. We'll now open it up to the City Council for questions. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Posnewski, and I want to say thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough, informative, and I mean, there's a lot that can be discussed here, but so I'll just make a couple quick points. I do appreciate the outreach, you know, to the community and community leaders, you know, the Point Neighborhood Association, the North Shore CDC, and you know, obviously there is a lot of opportunity, you know, for improvement. It's not pedestrian friendly, and of course, your ideas, you know, community room, incubator space. Just a couple things at previous meetings I just wanted to keep on the radar. You know, as you know, there are several, was mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, you know, government service agencies, their DTA is there that, you know, that provide critical services. And of course, the nonprofits are there as well, the pantry. And my concern is, you know, rents, you know, of these commercial spaces and leases, you know, going up. If there's going to be attention to making sure that it's sustainable for them as the project moves forward. So, and just two other points too. I mean, obviously, what will be discussed is, you know, the 1,200 units and 20% affordable. But the AMI, you know, I know you don't have all the numbers yet, but you know what AMI that will be. You know, as we all know, 80% isn't all that helpful. So I know those numbers, you know, will need to be closely looked at. And also, I didn't know if, you know, you mentioned that there's not accessible groceries, if you had any plans for any kind of grocery store that would include, you know, reasonably priced staples. So those are just a couple of quick points that come to mind. Thank you.
I'll start backwards.
Patrick, could I just ask one favor?
Of course.
For the public to be able to see us all in the room over here, could you stop your screen sharing? So the local access TV can.
All right. the grocery store. We've heard at the very beginning we wanted grocery stores, and then we've heard we haven't, and traffic is a component of whether or not there's a grocery store. I think the current thinking is, like, we hear all the time, Aldi's. Go reach out to Aldi's. Try and get Aldi's in the park. We are very much open to it. I think it's really what we hear from the community as to whether or not, how big you want the grocery store or how small, but we keep hearing Aldi's. And honestly, I've already reached out to them, right? So it's like, let's get this spot on the radar. You guys need to talk. And there's been some communication. They are open to listening. So that's the easy one. And I'm going to go in the back order because I had 13 in my head. I think there's 13 nonprofits. Do I have that right, Katie? It's currently 13 nonprofits. We are building into the economics, realizing that we can't raise the rent on these nonprofits and how crucial they are to the Salem Point neighborhood, and that they need to stay where they are. Now, that might not stay in the exact same spot, obviously, but, there's room in, say, the newer residential buildings on the ground floor for something like that, right? Something to be walkable. And obviously, Salem Pantry with the, the demand is going to be back to the Salem Pantry given what's just happened to the local grocery. And I forgot your third question.
Oh, that was...
No, there was one more. I missed one.
I know you don't have all the numbers.
Oh, AMI.
Putting on the radar, what the affordability would be.
So we are currently at 10% at 60 AMI, 10% at 80. We are also exploring partnership with the North Shore CDC, which would give them a lot on Congress Street, which they would be able to build. We would literally give them the land for them to build at the AMI that they feel proper. So we are still exploring all alternatives. Understand it's a fluid conversation.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President Prosnewski. Through you to the team here. I've got 600 questions. And Councilor Jerzel and I think have met with you and everyone from Prime and more than we meet with our families. So I want to start with sustainability, so maybe Sean can step up. I just noticed on one of the slides, you don't have to bring it back up, and when you were talking about the the area that could accommodate kayaks and things like that, which looks really cool, it didn't seem like it reflected the berm being raised. Is that closer to the development? Because it's kind of like steep down to the water.
I think at this point, I want to acknowledge that we're at the zoning change phase of developing the property. So details have yet to be worked out, but we're all in favor of providing access to the water however we do it.
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about sustainability and then resiliency. So as we've talked about, July 1st of last year, we adopted the specialized code, and being all electric, qualifies. I did want, and I know you have a lot of solar PV, but I have two questions about that. Have you considered passive house design for the buildings?
Absolutely. We've done it in many projects.
Okay. So if a building isn't all electric, it has to be passive house design as part of the code. And being all electric, I'm assuming that you're going to do some kind of combination of air source and maybe ground source geothermal?
We've actually talked with a company about developing geothermal and seeing what the possibilities there are, whether that's building by building or campus-wide, Shetland Park-wide program. We haven't gone that deep into it yet, but we're very excited about the possibility of that for sure.
So that's terrific. And just throwing this out there, there's a project, actually, two projects. Salem State is actually doing the largest geothermal project in Eastern Mass, but St. Peter's Church is doing a geothermal project. And the cool thing about their project is they've realized that the more buildings that are part of the geothermal system, the more efficient the system is in general, and may give you an opportunity, if the CDC is across the street or whatever, to combine with them. there's nothing that I'm going to ask for now that's mandated, and I might bring up this development a couple of times because it's somewhat transformative. It's also in my ward. The residents on Canal Street, the Bertini project, has 250 rental units, actually has 270 bike parking. You don't need bike parking to be the same size as a vehicle, another kind of vehicle. And they also have 10% EV charging. So I'm encouraging you with an all-electric site to have as much capacity for EV as possible.
We would absolutely welcome the conversation with the planning department to figure out what the right ratios of parking is for residents, for commercial, et cetera. And if we can reduce the car parking by increasing bike spaces and other alternative ways of dealing with mobility, we would welcome that.
And my last thing on sustainability is the shuttle. As you and Patrick are sick of hearing me talk about wanting to have a shuttle, I think it's great that you've made a commitment to that. I would encourage you to make it kind of a different radius. So if you went to the ferry and then to the current MBTA stop and the future MBTA stop, you would have a really good link because we are going to have a new train stop at some point. Resiliency, just, I know that there are laws that you have to contain your stormwater. I just want you to be aware that we are considering potentially a program for stormwater where, properties can actually create credits and actually benefit from keeping the stormwater on the site.
That's fantastic. We're ready to talk.
Yeah, great. Mr. Mosier mentioned the wind spin-off space, and so I wanted to ask if you guys as a team have had conversations with Crowley.
Yes, I have. Very preliminary, just expressing interest in helping each other.
Yeah, they're very dependent on, the federal landscape of what's going on when they'll be able to do things.
And building 3, which is the new, or which I'm calling the tough tech, new industrial type, I think they would have a part or a say in how that building, what that building's equipped with, given what they might need.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of work in the schools. Mm-hmm. They've really been a very good neighbor and partner.
And we're fully prepared for all that, right? I kind of equate some of what we could do to be like a touch tank at an aquarium, where whether it's the Salem Public Schools or the charter school, we're going to have all these solar, we're going to have a living seawall potentially, we're going to have green roofs. It's all in all this mechanical equipment. It's all potential for students to get immersed in.
So you brought up the school district. We have a really innovative CTE program, which actually offers disciplines that Essex Tech and other vocational schools don't. I'm on the board for the Clean Energy Center Renewable Energy, and I'd be glad to hook you up with some of the people there. We're actually doing things where the students there can actually get a huge advantage in things like wind and solar. I do want to touch base on something that Councilor Merkel said about affordability. As you know, that's been a sticking point for me. And I just want to mention a few things. The South Campus 40R project is 24% at 60% on average. It's in a much different residential area, mostly single-family homes. This is in the highest density, lowest income neighborhood. And the residents on Canal Street, the Bertini project, which is not a 40R or anything else, is actually 20% at 60%. And it's a very difficult project in different ways than yours because it's 14 acres. Because almost 10 acres is wetlands, they actually have to build in a very small space, so it's really difficult to do that, where you guys have a little bit more flexibility in your site. And so I did want to just encourage this idea that the more affordability, the better for the neighborhood, the better for the city. And I think you can get there. I think it's really important. 60%, for everyone's information, 60% AMI is literally what we've calculated as a city to be our median. One thing I do want to encourage is as much universal design in the buildings as possible. I know that the requirement for the state for ADA is something in the 5% range and maybe 10%, right, Sean, that 5%? But universal design is something where you can build units that are okay for people 8 and 80 and everything in between. I just want to encourage you to think of that as you develop it, because that will really make it a more diverse project. I do want to mention something. I think it's really great that you may be offering the CDC this space, and that would bring more affordability to the neighborhood, but I don't believe that those units should be counted. I have this idea that when people walk down a hallway, they shouldn't know which units are affordable and which ones aren't. And in our inclusionary housing ordinance, all the units have to be on site, okay? So I think that's really important.
And to be clear, we're not counting that in our 20%. Okay.
Or 24%, or whatever you come up to when you get your final number together. I do also want to follow up on something that Councilor Merkel said about nonprofits. You know, it's difficult because there's so many nonprofits in that space, which is really great for the space. It's great for the city to have them. We're very lucky in Salem to have such remarkable nonprofits. But you know, currently I don't believe you have a discounted rate for nonprofits. And even though the intent is not to raise the rents on nonprofits in the future, they have been raised since the property has been owned. And you know, it's your property, it's a private property, you can do what you want, but I just feel like it's really a way to market, you know, the whole Shetland Park idea.
Noted.
And I know there's probably other, I do want to mention one other thing, because Councilors Jerslow and Prosnewski and I in different venues have meetings with you and Mr. Mosier and other people, and I do want to express appreciation for some of the good faith gestures that have been done recently. But I'm still looking at the big picture of, you know, being a good landlord, being a great neighbor, being innovative, being something that everyone in Salem can be proud of.
Thank you.
Council Davis.
Thank you, President Prosnewski. I had a couple comments, questions. I think, you know, in a housing crisis, and we've talked, you know, a lot in the past month or so about, you know, needing to see 2,200 units over the course of 10 years. You know, this could be potentially really helpful and exciting, but I think the devil's really in the details. So just wanted to say up front, you know, this is something I could see myself being really enthusiastically supportive of. But, you know, definitely some concerns. So the affordability percentage is definitely my top concern. And I want to thank Councilor Cohen and Councilor Jerslow for engaging in those conversations. You know, there was a comment that I believe you made at the beginning of the presentation, maybe in the introduction, about how those conversations have shifted that affordability percentage up, perhaps. But I believe with 40R, the mandate is 20%. So I was just curious about that comment and just wanted to say, you know, 20% is a lot better than our inclusionary zoning ordinance, but it's a lot lower than what I'm told is the natural affordability in the Point neighborhood right now, which is around 70%. You know, so there's that very real concern about the effect that it would have on rents in that neighborhood. So just curious about, yeah, where we're at with that, and if there's still some wiggle room and thought to going higher.
A little tough to answer, right? Maybe, Eric, can I call on you for a minute, maybe to talk about, like what we talked about last Monday at the Salem Point neighborhood? Just affordability and supply, demand, and how we get there? I should have. Eric from RKG.
Good evening, members of the council. Eric Halverson from RKG Associates, for the record. Yeah, we had a great meeting last week where this question also came up. And the way I like to think about the benefits of this project are sort of twofold. One is the delivery of supply, which I think was part of your comment, Councilor, which is a very good one. There's not only a housing shortage here in Salem, but statewide and certainly nationally, this conversation continues in every corner. We work nationally, we do housing studies all year long, and it's a topic of conversation everywhere. So I think just generally the delivery of 1,200 units will help to at least ease some of the pressure over that time. It certainly won't, no one project can alleviate sort of the kind of, for lack of a better term, crisis that we're in, but this will certainly help delivering this number of units. I know there's also a lot of discussion about the AMI, and as Patrick and others have said, that's sort of part of the ongoing discussions. But from my experience, typically the 40Rs are delivered at 20% to 80% of AMI, so I think there's some recognition here that 60% needs to be part of the conversation. I know the development team is considering that with the sort of 10% and 10% split. I know that's ongoing. So in general, we had sort of had that conversation at the last meeting with the Point neighborhood last week, and that was kind of our take on it, that we really think the supply is critical, and obviously the AMI conversation's ongoing.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I certainly appreciate the supply side argument, but yeah, just with respect to this particular neighborhood, there's certainly kind of a different conversation that I think is important. And there's a lot that I really liked in the presentation, whether it had to do with sustainability, waterfront access, those walkways, energy efficiency. There's a lot of great stuff there. I wanted to ask a little bit more about something you touched on briefly in the presentation about a bus shuttle, potential shuttle service. It was mentioned briefly. I know that's another thing that Councilor Cohen has been advocating for. I think that's super, super important. I think whenever we're having these conversations, at least for my part with residents, about developments, certainly large developments, is kind of what we get back is, what are residents getting out of this? What's the community getting out of this? And having something really tangible like that, I think, really helps with those conversations and builds community trust. So I'm curious to hear more about that.
Other than Councilor Cohen has schooled me to make sure it's an electric shuttle. The path can be worked out. That's something we can talk about. I appreciate Councilor Cohen's recommendation for making a loop. It makes a lot of sense. The other part is doing blue bikes. I believe blue bikes are in town. Anything we can do to help alleviate people getting around, we're open to talk about, including a ferry over to the water taxi into city.
That's great to hear. Yeah, definitely a urgent need for better public transportation. And I'll just, echo the excitement about grocery store and just kind of advocate for as much kind of mixed use in the development as possible, and curious where your thoughts are on that as well. With the kind of conversation about traffic and parking, and I think a lot of residents, probably a lot in this room, when they hear 1,200 units, that's where their mind immediately goes to. So, not just increasing public transportation, which I think is huge, but also bringing in amenities to where people live, right? So the idea of a grocery store being in there, a restaurant, barber, things that will alleviate the car dependency and need for everyone in those units to travel down to Market Basket and clog up our streets.
You 100% hit on it. The big box retail would be the grocery store, even if it's even big box. There's no big box retail. That's not what our intent. Our intent is community, barbershop, dry cleaner, smaller things like that. And not necessarily, we've heard from, Main Street Salem, don't compete with downtown, right? Don't steal our businesses that are downtown and bring them over there. So it's not that type either. It's what's needed in that community. And we're not looking to create tens of thousands of square feet of retail. It's service retail for the people who are there, to your point, to cut down on traffic.
Councilor Marcello.
Thank you, President. So this property is really a beautiful piece of property in a really unique location in the city and has huge potential, along with several challenges. When I look at this, I think of the seaport in Boston. And so I'm wondering, what are the lessons learned from the Seaport project that you guys have researched and that you've taken into consideration as part of this plan?
I can try that one. I think one thing that makes a big difference, and I'm gonna unintentionally insult civil engineers. Civil engineers designed the seaport. It's all about the streets, the big, wide streets that are hard to cross. What we're doing here is in the middle of a neighborhood. It's actually at the end of a neighborhood, the Point neighborhood. And we have tried as much as possible to make this as pedestrian friendly as we can. So in the plan that I showed, yes, remember all those red lines connecting and extending those streets? Those were pathways. Cars are intended for very little of those red lines. Only enough to get into the below ground parking garage or the existing parking garage. But beyond that, it's very pedestrian focused. So they're narrower streets, they're wider setbacks, and it's all about the life on the sidewalk. The livability of it, exactly. Does that help, or did I not get there?
Yeah, I think that, if you live in this area and you listen to the aftermath of the Seaport development, there's a lot of big ticket items that were ignored when that was designed. Things like gentrification and exclusivity, which is built into that project, right? Things like racial and economic segregation, right? Lack of public transportation. These are huge things. The one thing that you guys are doing is the sustainability and resiliency that is lacking in the seaport. But those other ones are huge, right? And so, I feel a huge burden sitting on this council talking about this project and wondering how you're building in any sort of safety for this segregation that did happen in the Seaport area, and I'm not hearing how you're addressing it in this project.
Well, another big difference between the two places that we're talking about is there weren't any residents of the Seaport 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's all new. It's billions of dollars of buildings, and a lot of glass and steel, architecturally unfriendly, perhaps. And only recently, since the retail streetscapes have been built in, do you see a lot of people. And you can go there today, and then there's people all over the place. But it's quite a difference from what we find in the Point neighborhood. I mean, I think the disparities in income and those kinds of things, are clear between the Boston Seaport and the Point neighborhood. And we recognize that. And that's why we have had extensive conversations with folks in the neighborhood. How can we make this better? We're looking for suggestions on what to populate the Shetland Park with, whether it's community rooms or incubator spaces, making the pedestrian-friendly streetscapes, the waterfront access, all of that, in order to serve the community, not serve the fat cats, if you will, who might buy an apartment and never live there. That happens. We don't expect that to happen here in Shetland Park. So I find there's lots of differences between the two. Even in the architectural character, we haven't designed all of these buildings. I mean, again, we're at the zoning phase of this long process. But the way we're thinking of the buildings are, trying to humanize the buildings and pick up from cues that we see around the neighborhood and how things are built, the brick structures, the clapboard structures, et cetera, and how can we build in those design themes so that it's a friendlier architecture, it's a friendlier streetscape. There's space for people to meet their friends on the street, barbershops and pizza places and things like that to serve the community.
Yes. I think, I think that the elephant in the room is the affordability. Will people be able to live there? Or will these all be very high-priced units that with some affordability, sure, but will people be able to live there? Or will your removing of that fence result in just an invisible fence that, it's still the point and our Salem Seaport that is this exclusive place? That's where I'm struggling. I really do have a problem with that. And it's all brand new stuff. There's businesses, but how are we keeping this a Salem space and not a high-end new apartment building that's many stories high, so you have great water views? And this is a problem. I think this is what I need to understand more of from you.
Totally recognize that and understand. We've heard from, all of the folks in the Point Neighborhood Association and the North Shore CDC, all of the folks that we've met in the neighborhood have expressed all of that. And so we've heard it. And it's on us. As Bob said, there's a great responsibility in how we build this and what is behind those facades and deep in the infrastructure. So we know that we can't just tear down the fence and expect everything to be happy now.
They won't hear you at home, Bob, if you're not on a microphone.
When Councilman said earlier that the buildings will be designed interior for somebody that's 8 to 80, that's, I think, really says it, and I think that was a great way to describe it. We want it to be livable for the citizens of Salem. That's the whole way. That's why we want everybody's input on what they want to see there as well, so they can put their fingerprint on it and help us make it integrated into the city the best we can.
Well, I think that comes down to price, right? I don't know how you can not talk about price.
Well, the price will be dictated by the market, and obviously it's going to be affordable for the people that live in this area. But we're not looking to put in, these extravagant, that's why we're not trying to sell condos, we're trying to make it affordable for the city. The toughest thing that we're dealing with is the challenges of building on the waterfront. That's the biggest challenge that we're dealing with.
Mr. President, through you, I'm Peter Tam, counsel for Prime Group, and I just wanted to respond because it's a very good question, and I sense that you aren't fully satisfied with the answer. So I want to talk a little bit because I've seen the Seaport develop over my tenure as a young lawyer when it was parking lots to now as I'm graying and confronting middle age. This is very different, and I think Bob brings up a couple points, and these are the ways we can protect as this project is redeveloped from some of the consequences that you're observing from the Seaport and other examples like that. In this instance, you have an opportunity to master plan, a single master plan. You did not have that in the Seaport. So when you see Bob at these meetings, the buck stops with Bob. And so what does that mean? That means when he says that this is going to be all apartments and there aren't going to be luxury condos, that's going to be built in. And you can't do that through zoning, but you can do that through the development agreement, right? There can be an agreement with the city. There'll be ongoing discussions with the neighborhood association and the CDC as well. And there'll be separate commitments made to the neighborhood and the community. So all rental minimum affordability, a mix of income. We've heard it again and again. Credit to the ward councilors for pushing on the team. But there'll be deeper affordability than is required by the state, and we continue to work on that. That mix of income is going to distinguish this from many other projects, and having it all apartment further compounds that. This is going to be very different. You're not going to see, and the market suggests that as well. The mix of uses, when Patrick and Sean describe the neighborhood amenities, this is not an exclusive community. You can tell right away by the intentionality in terms of the design here. This is a community that is going to enhance rather than exclude. And we can do that through, and your responsibility, I appreciate, is significant in this process, because we come to the council with the support ultimately of your good staff, planning board, planning staff, all the departments, as well as your consultants, will want to come back to you for consideration of zoning. That zoning is going to be very intentional. It's going to specify where uses are. It's going to specify types of uses. It's going to specify affordability. It's going to specify open space. One thing that this project can provide that no other project can provide is ultimately at least 240 affordable units available to Salem residents first. I don't think there's another opportunity in Salem for that kind of meaningful benefit. So we really appreciate and take these comments seriously. And as Sean and Bob have pointed out, we're taking notes. We can do better, and we will. So, but these are the types of conversations we want to be having, and we're very prepared to engage.
Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess it deserves to be said that this is, I think, the biggest project in the 400-year history of this city, or potentially the biggest project in the 400-year history of this city. That it's happening in a neighborhood that has by far the most naturally occurring affordable housing in the city. And it's happening in the middle of a major housing crisis. It's pushing people out of their homes all over the nation and all over Salem right now. So I guess in my view, it's potentially the most important project that will ever come before the City Council. And we're entrusting in the hands of one developer. What other projects has Prime done that are similar to this in the past?
It's a great question. So this project will be phased in. First of all, we start that over a year's period of time, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So it's not going to be coming out of the ground all at once. So that does a few things. And obviously it lets things get absorbed into the community, so you're not overbuilding or underbuilding. So it's going to be brought in, not all in one big shot. We own roughly 40,000 multifamily units throughout the country. So we're very large in the market rate apartment business. I would say the units that we typically own are B to A- type of apartments throughout the country. We also, what we just did in Saratoga Springs, which is where our corporate office is, and we're actually doing it right now in West Chelsea as well in New York City, is we've taken an older building and made it now green, fully LEED built in Saratoga with a green roof, fully LEED to 55,000 square foot, all natural materials, terracotta, sustainability, absolutely beautiful. So we've done both on the development side. We've built roughly 10 to 15,000 multifamily over the course of the company's history, on top of doing these type of commercial projects as well. Prime and all of its subsidiaries is probably an $8 to $10 billion company. I started the company actually in college. I had very supportive parents. The year I graduated, they actually took a home equity loan against a family house, and that was the seed money I started the business with back in 1999. And today we have over 1,000 employees throughout the country. We're in Canada, the U.S., 28 states roughly, correct, Jürgen? And then a bunch of the U.S. territories as well in the islands.
Thanks. So a lot of smaller projects, but fair to say nothing of this size has ever been attempted by Prime.
Well, we have built projects that are this big that is scaled in. Obviously, that's why I want to bring up that we're going to be phasing this in. There's probably 2 companies in the world that would take it out of the ground day one, and you would only do that in a large metropolitan area, which this is not. And obviously, we'd be phasing this property in based on what the needs are of the community over time. But we have built to phase these type of buildings that are a few hundred units apiece. We have built numerous times.
You have other contiguous properties that are 1,000 to 1,500 units?
We are actually doing one right now in the planning stages in Saratoga as we speak.
Okay. And I guess my question here is also why Shetland? Why Salem? In this situation, it just seems. I guess, and
it's a great question.
And I understand that you've done other similar projects, or you've done other projects, but it just seems like a big bite to take all at once in a very sort of complex and vulnerable place. So just curious why is this happening here in Salem?
So I love New England. I grew up in upstate New York, up in the Adirondacks, Saratoga, Lake George. Love this whole, it feels very much like home. A lot of our projects are waterfront based or near water based. When I met Mr. Lappin, 10 years ago, when we first started talking about this project and purchasing it, I knew then it was a lot of responsibility, but it was more so than just a real estate deal. He had told me what his vision was of the property, which is some of it you do see on this presentation, what he envisioned as well. It's a property that should be opened up to the community. It's a property that should be a live lifestyle area with small amenitized retail, barber shop, grocery store for the people that live there and support there in the neighboring communities. I love the fact that there's a school there. It's some place where I would see myself growing up as a kid. I think it's a great area. I love it. My family right now is driving around the area. They love coming up here and visiting it with me. My 2 kids and my wife are up here right now. It's just a great area. That's why everybody, you all live here. It's amazing.
Thanks. I agree. If Sean or even Bob, if you could send along to the council just a list of those properties that you guys have worked on, just so we could take a look at it, or some sort of a presentation potentially. This may be a question for Sean, but I don't know if anyone mentioned, I think Councilor Merkel got at it a little bit, but will there be a right to return for the current nonprofits and commercial tenants?
Right to return? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, like they'll have a guaranteed space when they come back. So I assume some of these businesses are going to have to relocate temporarily. Will they have a right of first refusal or right to return? When
our intent through phasing is for them never have to leave and never have to stop operating.
Okay, so the intent would be that a business or a nonprofit like the food pantry would be moved into a separate part of the building temporarily
or into a new permanent home.
Okay.
Yeah, no downtime.
Okay. Thank you.
And let me go a little further, right? The bakery. I've been in that space 3 or 4 different times just to, I'm well aware the bakery employs about 34 to 35 people from the Point neighborhood. Those jobs are important. So it's not only nonprofits, but it's someone like the bakery we need to phase in so they're not down either and we don't lose them as a tenant.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier, I think somebody mentioned available to Salem residents first on the apartments. Can you just go into a little bit more detail on how what the mechanics of that are?
Oh, no.
Or I guess if it's even legal.
It's a good question. So the commitment and the concept would be that affordable units within the overall master plan, once constructed, would be under a regulatory agreement. That agreement essentially requires that they stay affordable for perpetuity. within that regulatory agreement, there would be the obligation to seek out eligible local residents first from the community to the extent consistent with law. And this is a customary obligation that you would see in many 40Rs, which is the concept that is contemplated here, which is an overlay district that would be approved by the state. You also see it in comprehensive permit projects and in other local initiative program projects. So it is it's a tool that allows for local preference. One other point I can't resist, if I may, Mr. President. Your questions to Bob as to Prime's experience, I think it's worth noting that this is a relatively unique opportunity, as you point out, and I don't diminish how important this project is, both for Prime and for the community. In this instance, this is not speculative. Bob owns this property. Most developers that I represent would be coming here before you without much skin in the game. They would have an option agreement, right? They wouldn't be able to make the type of sweeping commitments that we are able to do. And I think that is an important differentiator. As the owner and as one of the largest taxpayers in the city, Bob's commitments can be met based on careful planning and commitments that we'll make in writing to the council and to the mayor.
And I guess just a comment, just to echo the comments of the other councilors so that we're all hearing this message from us. The affordability is right now not where it needs to be. The Point neighborhood, 60 to 70%, I think, is at the high end. Oftentimes, 80% doesn't do 80% doesn't do anything, I don't think, for us here. So I think that 60% is really a starting place, but we would love to see deeper affordability. And at these levels, 10% at 60 and 10% at 80, I don't think it's even, at least for me, it's not even something that I would consider saying yes to. So that all this stuff looks great in here. The use of the property, the way that you've imagined this looks incredible. But it's a lot of, these could potentially be great things to do, but there's not a lot of guarantees here yet. The affordability is a starting place. And I think the biggest worry is not just an invisible fence along that property, but also $800,000 condos spilling out into the Point neighborhood at a time when the affordability is incredibly important to the folks who live there and to the people in this city. So that's, I think, the biggest concern that I have on my side. But thank you all for the presentation.
Just one thing. The intention is not for any condominiums. It's all rental. I think I may have heard.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
It's all rentals. It's not condos. I think I may have heard something. Okay.
No, I think the concern I think that I have is not just the affordability inside that building, but the potential market impacts that it would have outside of that in the rest of the neighborhood, where we have a lot of rentals that could potentially convert over to condos.
Okay.
And I think you see a sort of an unnatural transformation of a neighborhood in a very fast period of time. But thank you.
Councilor Girzolo.
Thank you, President Prasnewski. First, I just want to thank Patrick, Katie, Sean, and the whole team for always making themselves available to meet with Councilor Cohen and myself and all the community meetings that they've come to, and we really appreciate all the work you've done. I'm wondering if you could just talk on the project timeline. I know Mr. Mosier mentioned 5 to 8 years, but do you have any type of information on the phasing of the project so far?
I can give you the broad outline, which is if zoning were to move forward, we need to go through a MIPA process, which is probably 9 to 12 months. After MIPA, we have Chapter 91, which is 9 to 12 months. the way the site lays out and keeping everyone up and running, the school would have to be built first. The charter school would have to be built first. So the charter school would be built first on the closest to the Palmer Yacht Club, and then we would start to chip, and that frees up the middle area behind the North Shore Community Health Building to create some space there to house nonprofits or other existing tenants. And then it start to chip away at Building 4, which is the Sawtooth Building, and work our way towards downtown with new development. And as Bob said, this is phased and, is done over 5 to 8 year period. Yeah.
And just one other question on, I know you did a traffic study, but did it include a seasonal pattern, especially in the fall where we have our biggest tourist season? I'm wondering if they could have done a seasonal pattern.
Jeff, can I ask you to? Jeff Durek from Vanessa.
Thank you, Council President. So we didn't include a seasonal factor. The traffic counts were actually done in the summertime, so it would reflect some level of summer-related traffic. Usually, as it relates to seasonality and like special conditions, let's say if we were looking at kind of the Halloween season or things like that, what we would do is look at how we would look at managing traffic as it relates to the project itself, rather than, I think, the issue of you wouldn't build something necessarily to accommodate that, but I know that the city's been very proactive in looking at shuttle services, let's say, to keep the traffic on the outside, but bring the residents inside to enjoy all of the amenities. So I think we would think about it more in terms of how the site may be able to manage that traffic more in keeping with how the city is currently managing the traffic patterns, I think, more so than trying to design something to accommodate those seasonal fluctuations.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President. I want to address the affordability, and grateful that Councilor Marcillo brought up, which he did. From the renderings, this is really beautiful buildings, really beautiful space. I'm really concerned about what's on the inside of the buildings. And I'm really not all that concerned about what the city ordinances or the fact that it's deep affordability than what's required. I can only focus on what I and hopefully my colleagues believe is important affordability for the neighborhood. You cannot force slower gentrification. We can't dictate what the market rates are going to be, but we can dictate how much affordability is on the project. And to me, that's really, and we've talked about it, this is my thing that I've been hanging the hat on, is I really don't care what exists, what is required, that this might be a little bit better than whatever. I already brought up examples of a 40R that's been approved, that's come back, that has deeper, a higher percentage of deeper affordability. And I just feel like there's only one way to kind of maintain as much of the working class neighborhood that exists there today, and that is through mandating affordability. Because everything else is whatever happens. There's nothing that we can control outside of that. Thank you.
Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, President. I have one last question, kind of a technical. The streets that you're creating, the extensions of Palmer and Levitt and the other streets that you're talking about, are those going to become city streets, or are they going to remain private?
The city most likely will ask for them to remain private, so we maintain them. I think it would all be part of the development agreement with the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Prosnewski. One last very quick comment. The one thing I did learn tonight is that the intent is to have rentals, and I think that's good news. Thank you.
If there are no other comments or questions from the council, I'll open it up to public comment, and I will ask anyone in the room who wants to make comment. I just want to remind everyone that this isn't a question or answer period. This is an opportunity for you and state what you think is important to the council and to the developer so that they can take note and digest it. And I'm hoping that we can keep it to short, like maybe under 2 minutes, and that way there we can squeeze in as much as we can, because I am looking at about 8 o'clock at the latest to end the meeting. So I think probably the easiest way maybe to start on this side of the room and kind of work clockwise. If you don't mind taking the microphone, and whoever wants to step up and may make a comment and state your name and address, if you don't mind, please. And
hi, everyone. Joanne Matera, Endicott Street. I have 2 questions. The first one is the infrastructure. Where is all that toilet waste going to go? Where is all that water going to come in to the project? How is the electricity coming in? That's a big space, and it's going to need a lot of infrastructure to support it. So that would be the first question I would have. And the second one, Bob, would be for you, a percentage for art. You talked about bringing in art. I'd like to see a percentage for art, and I'd like to see qualified people select it, not just anyone from the neighborhood who maybe took an art history class somewhere, but a paid art consultant who does it for a living, who really knows it. So those are my two issues.
thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rob Griffin. I live down on Pickering Wharf, and I had 3 things that I just want to talk about real quick. One of them was that I understand that they're going to build up a berm for the seawater and everything down there, which I think they definitely have to do. But I'm just concerned whether or not any environmental impact or studies were done as far as what effect that's going to have along the shoreline, the coast there, because we've already got a flooding problem down there. Anyone has to just go down during a full moon and look at Derby Light. It looks like it's out in the middle of Salem Harbor. So we've already got issues down there with water. So if that berm goes up, where is that extra water going to go? I'm hoping that that's being considered, that there's some sort of environmental impact being looked at for that. Secondly, I understand there's a lot of city councilors, you folks are opposed to condos and really pushing the affordable housing and rental issue. I personally think that's a mistake. I think that homeowners have a better interest. They have a vested interest in the city. They care about the city. They support the city more. If you want to go for affordability, I agree with that to a point, but why aren't we talking about affordable home ownership as well as affordable rentals? I think that you can talk about affordable housing and it can include home ownership, because I think any of us that own a house in here will tell you that really the key to the American dream and the key to success in this country is owning your own home. As long as you pay rent, it's very, very difficult to get ahead. If you really and truly want to help the people in this community, you need to work on affordable home ownership, not affordable rental properties. And lastly, there was talk about, I listened to this on the way in driving in from work, so I heard some discussion about the art. There's going to be some discussion about additional murals down in the Shetland Park. I'm not against the murals. They serve a purpose. A lot of those artistic murals, they came out of the community policing days in the 1990s. In urban cities, we had graffiti and big problems in urban decay. And they were intended for covering up graffiti in parks, playgrounds, train stations, bus stations, traffic boxes, and stuff like that. The art in the city, we have a lot of great artists in the city. They do a fantastic job. They look beautiful. But there's such a thing as too much of a good thing, and it's something getting out of control. I think the point with all the murals that are over there right now, I don't want to say, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. It's almost, we don't need to point out to people that it's a different neighborhood. You're trying to, it has a certain stigma to it with some people, and it makes the neighborhood look a certain way. I think that, we don't need that. We need that, the neighborhood to be included in the community, to be part of the community, not singled out to look different than the rest of the community, if that makes any sense. So I would hope that any art that goes in the Shetland Park area, that they have a variety of art. I mean, enough with the murals. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from this side of the room?
Holly Wilbert, 7 Cedar Street. So a significant concern I have is about the structure of 40R. And in the structure of 40R, it says that the planning board would have 120 days to review the project. And in a phased project, I don't see how that works. Even if the applicant is looking for extensions over 8 years, 5, 7, 8 years, how do we expect the planning board to come back to the city council and approve the 40R zoning, knowing that the 120-day review process is ghastly out of alignment with the zoning? And I think, to be honest with the city of Salem and the residents, that has to be resolved before any of this can go forward, because you cannot take a phased multi-year project and say that the zoning review is 120 days by the planning board. It's not fair to the planning board, and over 5, 7, 8 years, how many times will the composition of the planning board change? We see it happen, and it's as though new people would be coming into this constantly through a phased project, trying to understand what's gone before and what's coming. So there's a disconnect, in my opinion, between the 120-day requirement in the 40R zoning and this project, which is almost 3 times the size of the South Campus project, which I have concerns about that as well in terms of the 120-day review for our planning board for 475 units. So I think that the council needs to grapple with that as this process goes forward.
Thank you. All right, step up to the microphone. Thank you.
Vicky Siriani, 194 Lafayette Street. 2 things. I'm under the impression that this project includes a hotel. If that's true, I think people should know that. That should be included in the discussion. And secondly, I just want to echo Councillor Hapsworth. This is a huge project. It's a huge project, and it has a wonderful team. I applaud you about all the things that you want to do. Is the city prepared for the size of this project, for rebuilding the infrastructure for this project? Because the city cannot make a mistake. You councilors cannot make a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so stiff. I've been sitting for so long. Good evening, Lucy Colchado, 1 Chase Street, President of the Point Neighborhood Association. And I just wanted to comment that for, yes, a number of years, we have had discussions with the team. They have come to our meetings multiple times. There are definitely still questions that we have and some concerns, but I'm confident in that we are able to they've been accessible enough and to be able to speak to them, to be able to discuss the project as it goes on, and more important, also the impacts to the neighborhood, obviously, and how we can work towards a community benefits agreement to offset some of those impacts. And so those are conversations, just for your clarification, that we've also been entertaining for a number of weeks now, that we will continue to have as we hear more details and more finalizations and confirmations of the project. But I just wanted to let folks know that the Neighborhood Association has been very active in conversations with the team and will continue to do so, because we also appreciate, and I want to thank you all for the questions that you're asking, that we've also been asking. And so I think we still have a ways to go in terms of some final details, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to work, I think, together as a city, as a community, to make this development an important and beneficial one for the city and for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, former councilor.
Hi, thank you. My name's Amanda St. Mary. I am a resident of The Point. I've lived in Salem for several years, but I'm a new condo owner on Pingree Street. And during the presentation, I could see my exact unit in some of those photos. So when I heard about the Shetland Park redevelopment, it's a little nerve-wracking, and I'll trim down what I was really fired up about. But I'm excited to see that it has become, I think it's perfect for redevelopment. I think, I'm not against any kind of residential development. I think that's wonderful. I was excited to hear about the shuttle, proposed shuttle for access to the commuter rail. I think that's great. A little nervous about, listening to idling shuttles, but, I am shocked about the sheer size of the project. Proposed 1,200 units is, that's huge, and I think everyone else here would agree. And it was called a significantly high-density residential project, and I'm nervous about how much activity and traffic concerns are going to be brought into the neighborhood. And, that's part of the reason why I moved to that part of the area. Living on Pingree Street, it's got that nice quiet part, of Shetland Park. I just thought that was, very nice and peaceful. And to have residential development over there, I know change is inevitable, and, I'm not opposed to it. And I support Salem Academy and them having a beautiful new campus with modern facilities, but the size of that development, is really shocking. And to be honest, from my unit, I have nice views of Palmer Cove and the Atlantic Ocean, but looking at plans, the buildings as proposed, they're going to obfuscate any views that I myself or anyone else in my building has. And it kind of makes that part of my investment, pretty worthless. So, that's a little disappointing to see. But I think, overall, I'm excited for the project, and I think it'll be a good thing for the community, but I just urge the city council to just really reflect on the size of the project and the size or the scale of how many units are going to go through there. I've heard numbers proposed up to 4,000 new residential tenants, visitors, businesses. I mean, that's huge. And I'd hate to see the size of the parcel be taken advantage of, and especially also the Point community. It's, it's very densely packed as it is, and I just hope we can reflect on the proposed scale of the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in council? We'll go to Zoom and see if we can take a couple of questions from people in Zoom. I don't believe I see anybody with their hand raised. Veronica Miranda? Veronica, go ahead. I believe you're unmuted.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Dear councilors and members of the public, my name is Veronica Miranda, 9 Garden Terrace, Salem, Mass. I work in the Shetland, in a Shetland office building, and I'm a public housing tenant in Salem and serve on the Housing Authority Board. I care deeply about expanding housing, but I believe that it needs to serve the people who actually live and work here. I attended last week's meeting at the Point Neighborhood Association, which was much shorter and more condensed than this presentation here. And in my opinion, it was a highly polished, investor-centered version of a proposal. They told us the project might cost somewhere around $1 billion, but claimed that they had no idea what the projected revenue would be. They haven't released the anti-displacement study to the public. They haven't shown us how the seawall will affect nearby flood zones, and they still haven't followed through on deep community outreach that they promised over a year ago. So the comments about community really fall flat, to be completely honest. Why is the council being asked to approve zoning first before we see a full MEPA review? If you approve 40R, this project becomes by right and you lose your ability to shape it. Additionally, another comment or question is, will the building be donated to Salem Academy or is it intended for rental? I'm afraid that Salem Academy wouldn't be able to afford a higher rent. Lastly, our community urgently needs an additional elementary school in that area. And I don't know if that's worth the developers looking at, but I wanted to mention that as a school committee member. And this isn't obviously just about Shetland, but it's about all of us in Salem, our real community needs. And I think it's a shame if we hand over control to private investors and billionaires with a strategic pitch and a profit motive. Billionaires shouldn't exist. Thanks for your time and service.
Thank you. Next, we have Jane Romo. Jane, ask you to unmute. I think you're all set.
Hi there. Thanks so much for taking my comment. My name is Jane Rumrell. I live at 5 Holly Street. Veronica just now really beautifully summarized everything that I wanted to say. So I just want to echo one more time how, regardless of whether there are a few units that are quote unquote affordable in this development, the addition of all of the other high-end units is going to drive up rent in the community around this new development. My rent already this year went up $2,400. I have lived here 11 years. I work full-time, and it's already we're almost driven out of here. So I just want to put that to the council and just ask you to think about how this is going to drive up everyone's rents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Betsy Frederick. Go ahead, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Betsy Frederick, 93 Canal Street, and also a member of CERC currently. Thank you for the presentation. It was really very interesting to see what the expectations are with respect to this development. Just one thought. We recently were able to host a meeting with CZM in terms of coastal resiliency and looking at what the state is doing with respect to a broader regional vision around resiliency. And given that this property has almost, as people have mentioned several times through the meeting, almost a mile of waterfront associated with it. I'm hoping that the developer is working with the city in terms of their own resilience and sustainability plan with respect to coastal resilience, as well as the state, and recognizing that they could be a key anchor to a broader resilience project. Again, with consideration, as was mentioned by some previous speakers, what are the implications for the neighboring properties? Looking at a property by property or development by development basis for resiliency is a recipe for not being resilient, in my own opinion. And also with respect to that, I'm really grateful to see so much open space and creating more pervious area, but very interested as you go through the permitting process to understand how much of that surface area is going to be used for stormwater management, retention, and detention, how much of that is expected to be able to help with storm surge and the impacts to the property on that basis. And then, of course, obviously, what kind of plantings and things would be used so that they would be resilient to both freshwater and saltwater impacts to that property, and obviously the cost of maintenance for all of that going forward, because green infrastructure is a wonderful stormwater management tool, but you have to consider not only the capital costs of the infrastructure, but the maintenance of that as well. So thanks again. Looking forward to seeing the property and the development go through its planning and permitting process.
Thank you. So we have someone from a telephone number beginning in 1617. Go ahead, you're unmuted.
Hi, Justin Whittier, 10 River Street. You may be getting less participation because the agenda doesn't have information about how people calling in can raise their hand. I happen to remember how it works, but anyway, I just want to echo the comments made by Veronica. I think it was Miranda. I think she made a lot of good points. And just to say briefly that, Salem is we're continually losing business, and that this area is this is prime, as everybody knows, this is prime commercial area, and Salem needs businesses. They contribute to our taxes, and they don't take as much in services. Meanwhile, our taxes and fees are continually going up, so we shouldn't be giving away prime commercial location for housing, especially luxury housing that really isn't going to benefit anybody. Frankly, this isn't going to do anything for housing prices. We've been hearing this for the last 15 years. Oh, we just increase supply and prices will go down. Well, they don't. And the simple reason is that the demand outstrips the supply. And we're not going to change that with this either. All we're going to do is we're going to add more high-priced housing that isn't going to benefit anyone in Salem, but we are going to have to deal with the negative side effects of it, which is increased demand on our infrastructure, increased traffic, demand for parking, everything else. And frankly, the notion that they're going to alleviate car dependency somehow is really a joke. I mean, people need cars to commute to jobs, to go to the doctor, to visit family, friends, to go to the beach, the library, whatever. There are so many reasons why people need cars, and we see this every day. People who live in a neighborhood like mine see it. So we can't pretend that there's a simple solution for getting people out of cars. So in short, I think that this project is bad for Salem, and I hope that you will vote against it. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. We have time for one more, and I'm not sure whether that's... Ty, you want to double check on me over here so that...
Thanks.
Yes.
Judith says.
We have time for one more, and that's Judith. So Judith, if you want, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Judith.
My name's Judith Kahn. I live at 145 Federal Street in Salem, Massachusetts. I'm a landscape architect, and I do follow what's going on in the city very closely. There's so much that one can say about this project. It's hard to pinpoint anything specific, but I echo my fellow citizens' comments about the concern about the scale and also the location of this project. We're creating a small city within a city. It has really nothing to do with Salem, although it's been said that it's integrated into the community. I don't believe that it will be if it goes ahead. This is the third of 3 40Rs that are bringing immense amounts of rental housing into the city. And I agree with one of the fellow commenters who said that rental housing is not a path to ownership. It's not a path to becoming a true citizen of Salem. So, and also the concerns about infrastructure, transportation. This is very far from public transportation, and 40R projects are supposed to be close to public transportation. So I would urge the City Council not to support this bedroom community that is proposed for Shetland Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, it's 8 o'clock. We're good. Thank you for your public comment and your interest. Councilor Hapworth, go ahead.
Ready for motion?
Yeah, I was just going to make one. Councilor Watson-Feld.
Thank you, President Brzezinski. Just a note for the public listening in whose hands were not able to be called on tonight within your time frame. We welcome all comments be sent to us via email, citycouncilors@salem.com. Thank you for participating.
This is the largest development project that this city has seen since the Great Fire of 1914. There's no doubt about it that what's going to be built there is not going to have a direct effect on the Point area, but also have a ripple effect throughout the city. So it's going to be a challenge for everyone, for all city government and for the developers. We've taken the first step in understanding the size and the scope of this, and we have a lot of more steps to go. This is just the beginning. So all public comments, anyone who has any interest, anything to say, please get in touch with your councilors. Now that we seem to have a better open line of communications opened up between everybody, I think it will be a lot more transparent. So my thank you to the public, to my fellow councilors, to the people from Prime, and we'll wait for the next event. Councilor Morcello?
Thank you, President. I move that we return this to the full council and receive and file the presentation.
Councilor Morcello moves that this matter be received and filed. All those in favor? The second by Councilor Cohen. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Councilor Morcello?
And I move that we adjourn.
Councilor Morcello moves for adjournment. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.